Halo Season 2 Episode 6 just came out, and Paramount and the creators of this show pretty much hawked a big loogie, wound up, spat right in the face of the fans, and just laughed at them with this episode. So the biggest complaints from the fans last season were that Master Chief didn't have his helmet on and his armor on enough. Personally, to me, it wasn't a big deal that it was done. It was more how they did it that I found unacceptable. People couldn't stand Kwan and her whole side story because she was boring and just irrelevant to the plot and just kind of filled time. So what they decided to do was have Master Chief not wear his armor for the entire season so they could make it a big moment, like he's a superhero getting his outfit for the first time in the finale, is clearly what we're setting up for. Kind of like what you got with Daredevil Season 1 on Netflix, which was a great season for a totally different character. Or if they had started Master Chief as a kid and built up to him getting his armor at the end, fans probably would have lived with it. And not only is Kwan maybe the most important character in her own story, she's the most important character in Soren's and Master Chief's. So she's the key to unlocking the Forerunner stuff we find out in this episode. Halsey gives her credit for all of John's character development, if you want to call it that. But Halsey says that everything that has changed in John began with you, so she gets credit for that. She saved John a couple episodes ago. She saved Soren's wife earlier in the season so they could go help find their kid. She's on a fucking roll. This is the Kwan show, baby. Not only did the fans want to see Chief in his armor all season, every other character in the show wears armor in this episode except for fucking John. It's unbelievable. Oh yeah, and John gets his ass kicked again. He's just not allowed to win any fights. So let's just get into it. So right away, we start with Perez. For all the low budget action we've got and all the excuses for John not being in his armor, it looks like what they choose to blow their budget on, at least for now, was a training sim for Perez. You cannot make that up. It is so disrespectful to the fans. It's actually unbelievable. Because regardless of what you think of the story, which is dog shit, if John had been in his armor sometimes this season, then this would just be another scene that doesn't make sense. But they deliberately took his armor away after the first couple episodes, and he's not getting it back until either next episode or at the end of next episode to lead into the finale. So we start off with Perez. They do the inside the helmet cam thing again. We get first person a bunch. And she's suddenly a Spartan 3. So this show has wasted no fucking time not understanding the lore and not understanding their own world building in the show. What the show has done with the Spartan 3s is suddenly they're here. Perez, who was a comms officer in episode 1, too scared to fight, had PTSD, didn't fight again, panicked when Reach was under attack, puts on a suit of armor, boom, Spartan 3. That is fucking wild. If all it takes to create Spartans is a suit of armor, what are we doing here? Why is the entire UNSC not being trained this way and giving these suits of armor? This isn't a thing where all these other Spartan 3s were trained since they were children, or if they were, it's completely irrelevant since they're willing to make Perez one as an adult. And this is crazy. They took this from the lore and either didn't understand it or just didn't care. My guess is probably both. It seems that they were like, oh, Spartan 3s? Awesome. We can end this season and make everyone a Spartan. And I think that's probably where we're going to head. For the people who don't know, in the lore, the book is Ghost of Onyx. Kurt, who's a Spartan, gets kidnapped by Ackerson on a mission. He rigs his jetpack so he gets lost in space, quote unquote, and all the other Spartans think he's dead, but actually Ackerson took him to Onyx to lead the Spartan 3s and train them from the time they're kids. In the lore, the Spartan 3s are 4, 5, and 6-year-old volunteers, quote unquote. They're kids who are orphaned by the Covenant. The UNSC says, hey, do you want revenge? And then they take them in. They make these big companies of about 500 kids, and they train them for suicide mission to attack vital points in the Covenant to buy time for Earth and for humanity to figure out a way to fight back efficiently. So they took that part for the show because what they're doing is sticking them on a suicide mission. It's implied throughout the whole episode. And they're supposed to bring down a Covenant ship with a spike to hack their computers. And to me, this really just epitomizes the issues with the show, is that they just went to the Halopedia, took some keywords, and then just wrote the story they wanted to write. So the image on the screen here is the beginning of the simulation, and you can see they're all jetpacking, and to me, what looks like their SPI armor from the books, and they're trying to get on this Covenant Corvette, get to the bridge, disable it. Later, Kai describes it as a gunshot to the head of a Covenant ship. And this is their training simulation that we're seeing. So we couldn't show John wearing his armor all season. We couldn't really show much action. We got a lot of just CGI muzzle flashes, and you get the expression of the face of somebody shooting, but they don't actually show what they're shooting. pretty much simple choreography all season, and then they spend their money and time here. Away from John, on Perez, who somehow went from comms officer with PTSD to the only one who knew the Covenant were coming to a Spartan 3. Whew, boy. That's quite an arc for the 4th or 5th tertiary character. This type of scene right here is why I don't bother complaining too much about them breaking the lore as much as I complain about how bad the show is, and then use the lore as a comparison to why it's so much worse and why it's so frustrating that they abandoned the lore to give us nonsense. So Perez, training with these Spartans, as far as we're aware, they were in Illyria for a few days. John was asleep for a week. Let's just call it a couple weeks. They left Illyria at the same time that Perez left Reach. Now, she's training with these Spartans. She couldn't even function before, and now she's bantering with them. She's disobeying orders while they're doing the simulation. She's arguing with their team leader, and she's the last one to survive. They just completely flipped her character to whatever it needed to be, and I just don't understand why. Like, I know they want to have a through line for Perez the whole season and her looking up to John and whatever, but either make it make sense or just introduce a new character, or just give us generic Spartans for this scene, instead of some girl who couldn't even fight is now suddenly a badass and somehow in this Spartan program just magically. So they all wake up from the simulation and Kai lectures them. And I just want to say that all the Spartans die in the simulation. We never see the Covenant. Again, I'm assuming to save money. And the way that Perez dies is she's about to put the spike in and just gets shot from nowhere. And she even says, I got shot from nowhere. So I have no idea how effective this simulation even is when we don't see anything they're shooting at. I mean, they look good in their suits and they look good in their movements and stuff, but we see no enemies. And even when they die, it's just inexplicable because there's no one around. They just end up with a needler in them. So Kai says the whole purpose of this is these corvettes tear the UNSC ships apart, but they have really good targeting. They're superior in every way. And it's easy for them to target ships, but they can't target small things. She compares it to a sniper trying to shoot a swarm of bees. I think it's a fine analogy. And that's kind of where this goes. And then she bitches at Perez for not following orders. And Perez, again, who couldn't even speak before, couldn't even fight, is now suddenly defiant. Hardened veteran. Here's Perez outright telling Kai that the simulation's bullshit. Kai says war is random because she says the simulation's random, so they can't possibly win. Again, no clue what kind of sense this makes for training. I have no clue why the military in this world is the most disrespectful to the hierarchy, probably in any military ever. And not only has Perez become such a hard ass that she's the last Spartan surviving in the simulation, and she's the one defying orders and blah, blah, blah. She's defying a fucking Spartan. Like, we saw John save her multiple times and then she looked up to him. They've been talking all show about how the Spartans are legendary, how they don't die, how everyone should want to be like them. And then she's just disregarding her orders right to her face in front of everyone. Makes no sense. The world building in this show is just non-existent. And also, I can't remember if it was the first scene or the next one. The Spartans chant, Spartans never die, as they jump out of their little ship to fly toward the Covenant vessel. I hate this so much. I mean, for the show, I guess it works as a mantra, even though I still think it's kind of stupid. But the Spartans never die thing is a political propaganda thing in the lore. And it's weird because in the show, it's used for this Spartan, like, hype up weird shit. And then it's also used as political propaganda, even though the Spartans know that they die. So it's just strange that they all buy into it. And it's another thing they just pulled from the lore and bastardized. And Kai has to literally tell Perez we're not equals because Perez won't stop harassing her. This makes Kai also look like a really shitty leader. I don't know if that's intentional or if they just want a little bit of drama stirred up. I don't know if that'll be used for anything later. I'm not optimistic. But it does speak very poorly to her abilities as a leader. It's kind of like that scene in Game of Thrones where Tywin says any man who has to yell, I am the king, is no true king. That's what this feels like, except shittier. Because Charles Dance is great, and in the context of that scene, it makes sense. The context of this one makes no sense. When she has to say we're not equals, and like look down on her and try to intimidate her into listening, when she's been a Spartan for, I guess, 2 weeks. Parangoski is meeting Ackerson, and she gives this big lecture about how they had to genetically engineer this tea and make the glasses and stuff just for her. And what she's really saying is that she's the boss and she runs shit. It seems to me like people who like the show think this is really clever. Like, oh, she was working from the shadows. Why the fuck would the person most in charge work from the shadows? There's a difference in being a shadowy figure working behind the scenes and having to hide yourself and sneak around. And I feel like the people that think this is clever think that her literally sitting in shadows makes her a shadowy character or something. So we get this whole thing about the tea, and she's letting Ackerson know she's the boss, which presumably he would already know that. I guess this is the only hierarchicalist military in the entire fucking universe. I don't know. But she explains to him that Halsey's been spotted on Illyria, and she was with, and she says verbatim, maybe the biggest person they've ever seen. This is more shit where they want you to do the writing for them and put in the effort for them because they didn't put the effort in. They have not gone out of their way to make the Spartans look giant at all. The most that you'll get is they're like a little bit taller than everyone else. And sometimes not even that really. Like Soren and Halsey were looking eye to eye pretty much. John and Ackerson were looking almost eye to eye. He's a couple inches taller. Same for Kai. So they use this to say that he's the biggest person they've ever seen. And we all know it's John. Ackerson's like, well, you can't blame me for this. She should be dead. Because he left her in a jail cell on Reach. John, he left without his armor and Reach fell. And the reason I called this stuff with Parangoski stupid about her being shadowy is because if she's that powerful, which she is, the show makes it clear that's also straight from the books. The only power struggles that she has are with the other admirals and people at that level, like Admiral Hood, who've been around forever. Anyway, people were like, oh, the way that she snuck around and tried to coax information out of John was super spy-like and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you have the authority to just arrest his fucking ass, to go take his armor, stick him in jail, get what you want. Hell, put his pellet back in. Who cares? Like, all of this is just one of those things where dumb people are trying to write what they think smart people would do. And this is what we end up with. And here we have Spy Master John 117. He's with Soren, Lyara, Halsey, and Kwan. So this super secret hidden base, wonderful security. They let a civilian vessel land like 15 kilometers from where they're at, they say. Uncontested. They had enough time to walk about 9 or 10 miles to get right up next to the base before anything was done. And lack of security is something you'll see throughout this entire episode. And I say this every single episode, and I'm going to keep saying it. This is another thing to me that feels like the show was supposed to be some kind of spy thriller. Like, this is John's revenge episode, and people are betraying people, and everyone's doing shit behind the scenes, and you don't know who to trust. Just nonsense. After the techno remix of the original Halo song, because that wasn't good enough, we go to see Kai in the simulation on Reach. Ackerson shows up and cuts it off, and she's like, I couldn't sleep, and he's like, you feel guilty. This is actually not bad. Like, I don't mind this whole thing at all. She feels bad that she left him behind and they all died. She's having a hard time with the guilt. I'm totally fine with all that, shockingly. But it does seem like a bold move of Ackerson to continue the lie right after they just found out that John and Halsey were planet-side within a few kilometers. So Soren and Lyara are looking for Kessler. Kwan just wanders off and no one gives a fuck. And Halsey also just disappears and no one gives a shit. And John tells Soren to go find his kid. He's going to go into the base. So we see Kwan here wandering around on her own, and she starts to see people and have visions, and that witch lady guides her to a well. John attacks the guys that are sent out for him. He beats a few up, wounds a few. Choreography's okay. I don't really have a problem with any of this. It's just a little action scene that, again, is human on human violence because John's on a quest for revenge in the middle of the Human Covenant War. And obviously they show up with like 50 more guys. They arrest him. Kwan jumps into the well. It's a magical Forerunner well and catches her. And Halsey's down there waiting. Not really clear what's going on. They're just kind of doing magic shit all over the place. But this is vital to Kwan becoming probably the most important character. Kwan's freaking out and she's like, oh, I'm okay. And Halsey says, if you say so. She just comes out of the dark. No clue how she got down here. She's just exploring this area and knows where the Forerunner shit is. They allude to the fact that she's been here before, which is kind of weird considering this is supposed to be like the isolated, secret Spartan 3 base that she doesn't know about. Whatever. This conversation is so fucking weird between Halsey and Kwan. Halsey says, you ruined my work. And Kwan's like, oh, sorry, sarcastically. And Halsey says, don't be. Before John met you, he was emotionless, detached, a good Spartan, blah, 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 whatever. She calls Kwan a variable that led to drastic change in John. And now he's become uncontrollable and unstable. But she's also praising her for that. So it's like, you've ruined my work. It's worse now, but also good job. Thanks. Not to mention, like I said earlier, this completely takes away John's agency. He went from child to kidnapped to Spartan with a pellet to Kwan motivating him to be a human. Awesome. We go to the Arbiter, who looks like a mini Godzilla. He's putting the mark of shame on himself, which there's pretty much no way for anyone to know that unless you've played the games and read the books and all that. So this just seems like an Easter egg for the fans. Another way for them to pretend like they gave a fuck about the lore. But he's putting a mark of shame on himself because he disobeyed the hierarchs. This priest elite wants to kill McKee because she doesn't trust her anymore. And this entire story thread makes no sense to me still. Like, they don't trust McKee, but she's the only blessed one they have. But they keep threatening to kill her. And it's like, what, they're going to take the time to find another 1 in a billion human and hope that they can take them alive and get them to work with them? So this entire thread this time just kind of feels like filler to me. And again, you can see where more of the budget cuts are because a lot of the talking they do, all we're watching is McKee's reactions. They don't show the Arbiter or the other Sangheili on screen very much. Even later when there's an action scene, they do the same thing where they just focus on her and then you just see like Sangheili legs in the background and shit. The Arbiter says, no, she's useful. It's my decision. The hierarchs will be happy when we figure this out. McKee hides Cortana because apparently she was just laying on the floor. No clue why. She just left her chip on the floor. But I guess it makes it slightly more dramatic. I don't know. And this isn't a huge deal, but it's another one of those things where you can tell you didn't have any money. You can see how dark a lot of this is in the background and stuff. And they use like a lot of dark grays and it looks very human instead of like these bright purples and blues and kind of ethereal lighting and stuff that you would expect. They actually did it in the training simulator, which I don't really understand, but whatever. We go back to the training sim. You can see it doesn't look bad. Kind of looks like Mass Effect to me actually more than Halo, but not a huge deal. But I don't really understand the purpose of Kai's arc, if you even want to call it that. She got out here a couple weeks prior, like right before Reach fell. So what, she's supposed to train these Spartans in a couple weeks to take on a suicide mission? Like, how is it possible that she, who's never trained anyone, is going to train all the Spartans better than they were already trained in a couple weeks? Either way, we continue with Perez bickering with the troop leader. Eventually she has her way, they just give in to her, and they kind of bum rush the Covenant bridge. And again, we don't see any Covenant, we don't see what they're shooting at. You just kind of get this look, and you see them moving around each other, and they look coordinated and whatever. It's all just hallway fighting again. They finally get through, because Perez is fucking awesome. They put the spike in, ship shuts down, they go to fight their way out, and there's no enemies. This is implied, and they say it explicitly later. These are suicide missions. That's what the Spartan 3s are used for. And Perez figures it out pretty much immediately. This is a funny freeze frame to me. These are the Spartan 3s, celebrating like little kids who just won a video game tournament. Ugh. They bring John in what looks like a knockoff Silence of the Lambs scene. And as you can imagine, they shut themselves in this room with him. Can't lock the cells for some reason. He yanks all of them around, beats them all up, escapes. Best top secret base security ever. This is like watching fucking Austin Powers or something. Oh yeah, and before he escapes, Megan Rapinoe comes and taunts him. She's mad about last time they saw each other, and she makes fun of him for his squad mates dying and Team Cobalt dying, and what a bunch of losers the Spartans are. So I'm sure she's gonna get a horrible death, like cut in half or some shit soon. Ackerson says Chief's alive. Kai says how'd he get off Reach? And Ackerson says, well, McKee was there, and she's been in the other places that he's survived as well, implying that he's become a traitor. And Kai denies it, obviously. Not much else to say about it. They kind of just make everyone either cartoonishly evil or cartoonishly stupid for this to work. And all of this could have been avoided if they had just arrested Master Chief at any point in the story, which apparently is impossible. Here's a shot of John looking at the camera. This is the exact type of thing that makes me think this is a spy thriller. He breaks out of prison after turning himself in because he's tricky. He's looking at the camera like, I'm coming for you for my revenge. Yeah. We go back to McKee, and she's confessing that getting the Spartan D broke her ability, and she can't use the artifacts now. And Cortana laughs in her face because she's still mad that McKee cucked her. But really, this whole scene is just her saying she can't use the ability. She needs to be with John. And again, the people who want to like this show, no matter what, will say, see, that's why she let him live at the end of the Fall of Reach. And if that was the case, she should have just kidnapped his ass. Still makes no sense. No amount of them trying to be clever or whatever is going to make it make sense. And the implication is that Cortana is trying to manipulate her. McKee says, I'm not going to let you manipulate me because I don't trust you. And Cortana says, too bad, or we're both going to die. Here's Cortana looking smug. I liked her look better last season. What she's trying to get out of McKee is the location of Halo. And she essentially tells her, hey, I'll take you to where the other artifact is so you can have both and link up with John. For some reason, the UNSC was able to smuggle one artifact off of Onyx, but not both. I have no clue how they let that happen. The one was supposed to be in Visegrad, and the other one was in Sword Base. But it's like, if you knew you had that in Visegrad, why wouldn't you send whatever military you needed to over to take it back instead of just letting the Covenant run wild. Great leadership from the UNSC again. John breaks out of his jail cell, which they have on camera, and they literally just let him walk around the base. But they don't have it sectioned off. They don't send more men. They just kind of let him roam. Great security for the top secret base. We go back to Kwan's compelling storyline. She's complaining to Halsey that Spartans are the reason her mom is dead. Halsey politely says, I don't give a fuck. And they keep walking around this base. Halsey's looking for a specific path, and we find out that things have been shifted around. So she's kind of lost. Halsey's lost, but thank God this old lady is the second most important character because she's just guiding Kwan everywhere she needs to go. So Kwan sees her, she realizes this is the path I need to follow, and she's going to walk after her. John's walking around the base, just doing whatever he wants, trying to find his way to Parangoski. So we see that Kai got sent to get John back, and for the first time in the whole show, them having armor actually seems to matter. They argue a bit. John's like, Vanek's dead, Riz is alive but done, Reach fell, and this is all their fault. And Kai's like, I've chosen my path, I know what I want to be. And she kicks the shit out of him. He doesn't really fight back, but he gets his ass beat. John is just perpetually losing. I mean, he'll win a random fight within a couple elites here and there that don't matter, but everyone else is just having their way with him. There's a difference in losing a big battle or something to have to overcome later and just getting the shit kicked out of you perpetually. And John just gets the shit kicked out of him perpetually. And also, this is a weird character turn for Kai. I know what they were trying to do is have her go from like blindly loyal to John to kind of uncertain to then John lies and she doesn't trust him anymore. And now she's loyal to Ackerson. But it was just so poorly done that I don't particularly find it interesting because we just don't get that much time with her. And then John is proven right and she still doesn't take his side. So really, what's the point of even going down that path? I wanted to share this screenshot because she puts her helmet on to do this. And all the times they have their helmet off and their armor off, the show has her go fully armored to kick the shit out of Master Chief. And to me, that just feels like a message for the audience. Like, this is what we fucking think of you and your hero. Like, we're going to dress him down. He's going to fucking lose all the time. We're going to take his armor. When you were mad, we just took his helmet. And then we're going to have someone fully put on their armor and beat the shit out of him. So you can suck on that, assholes. That's what it feels like they're saying to the audience with this scene. I mean, to me, this is almost as on the nose as Kylo Ren's let the past die, kill it if you have to. Here's John, just taking his beating, got his ass whooped. And also, it's kind of funny, because last season, John fought against Vanek and Riz with no armor, and held his own, which I complained about then, that it undermined the armor. It's just hilarious to me that the one time that they make the armor matter is to ensure that Master Chief can get his ass beat to shit. More dialogue here from Parangoski and Ackerson that just fucks everything up. Parangoski says, with Reach, we didn't have a choice. That whole thing makes no sense. If Reach is that important, they didn't even try to defend it. And then Ackerson kind of implies that he feels guilty. And she says, well, you're not religious, get over it. And she says, we're going to need 1 million Spartans to take his place. And that's your responsibility. And again, all of this just makes no sense. If Parangoski thought he was uncontrollable and dangerous, they could have just fucking executed all of them. Or sent them on a suicide mission. They would have done it without knowing. Just nonsense. Again, people who think they're writing clever characters who just aren't capable of doing so. The way this is shot, it looks like that John was knocked out and they just left him there. Didn't check to see if he was dead. Didn't throw him in a holding cell. So top-notch security again from the super secret base. And they're really competent UNSC. Cortana wakes him up. She's communicating, like running through all their systems. Kind of weird that she can do that from a Covenant ship, but whatever, I guess. She was literally brain juice last season who could control his whole body better than he could. So I'm not sure what she is in this. I don't really understand how Cortana works in the show because they haven't explained it. We just saw the one chip that Maquis has that Cortana is using right now. I guess maybe she split off her different personalities. So she has one in the base and one in the ship because she's controlling both. But they haven't really said that. So maybe she's just in the Covenant ship and she's magic, whatever. We also get a conversation between her and Parangoski where Parangoski says that she left Cortana behind to infiltrate the Covenant systems and essentially be taken by the Covenant. And this whole thing, again, is something that I think that they think is clever, but I don't really think it makes any sense. Like, if they had found Cortana and just taken her and destroyed her because they couldn't figure out what to do with her, or even worse, if they had figured out how to take advantage of her, you just gave away a valuable asset for no real reason. In the books, it is established that they know that our AI are the one advantage we have over the Covenant AI, but the show has done nothing to talk about that. And we haven't really got a clear set of limits on what Cortana can do. I might be misremembering because it's been a while since I read the books, but typically the way that Cortana works is she has a chip and then she can be put into any machine of the Covenant, like at the console. Or she can like siphon off a part of herself and load that into the console and kind of run like a split processing thing. And then if they can get her back, she can reintegrate it to keep all the data. In the Kilo 5 trilogy, BB, who's Black Box, is an AI, and he describes it as almost being like blacked out drunk. If his data chip that he splits off gets damaged and then he reintegrates it, he feels like there's holes in his memory. So that's more how I conceptualize it. The way the show does is kind of just Cortana can do anything she wants, because she's literally taking over the entire base right now to let John do what he wants. Parangoski's like, good job. And then she's tricking McKee and Parangoski, it looks like, to help John out. She's got to win her man back from McKee, I guess. We see Cortana simultaneously talking to McKee, and their course is being redirected toward a human planet. She's talking to McKee, and they've decided to go to the human planet to get the other part of the artifact that they need to locate Halo, since they only got one of the two pieces, which I guess is why their mission was considered a failure last episode. Still unclear to me why they want to kill Maki so bad when they need her, but whatever. They navigate their way to this Forerunner site. Miranda Keyes is in charge. She insults her mom and says, thanks to your research, if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be able to catch your mistake. So it's nice that we haven't seen her all season and she's unpleasant right away. She's always rude to her mom, but, you know, still be nice if she was likable. Soren and Lyra are wandering around the super top secret base run by the really competent UNSC. They think they found where Kessler is, and they go hide. They pretty much had no screen time this episode, imagining they'll have quite a bit next week. Kai is pissed at Ackerson. She pulls up the simulation again with them in reach, and she beat the shit out of John, but is still pissed off at Ackerson and questioning him. Kai relays all the information John gave her about how they let it happen and blah, blah, blah. And Ackerson essentially says, sometimes you don't have a choice, which I actually think is an interesting point, but the show has already framed him as completely evil. And Kai says that she still trusts John, even though she just kicked the shit out of him. I feel bad for the actor who plays Ackerson, because he does a good job. They just don't give him much to do, really, which is unfortunate. Kai ends the simulation. Ackerson says, sometimes you just have to save what you can, and I was able to save you. She ends the simulation. Ackerson says it's too late. I sent the other military guys to kill him, and she runs off. No clue how they didn't get him killed after he was knocked out for an indeterminate amount of time, but whatever. John walks through the base, and Cortana is able just to control all the systems. Again, I don't really understand how she works in this, unless the implication is that she's already split, which maybe it is, and he just walks straight through the base. I think it's kind of weird that they portrayed John and Cortana as having a good relationship when he didn't like her the entire last season, and then he let her take his body, and then they pulled her out. They never really reconciled or had like a good relationship. It was weird. The priest confronts Arbiter with McKee, says that she's deceived him, that they're going to a human planet, and she's going to kill her. Arbiter says anyone who stands with me will live, and everyone else is going to die on this bridge. Then there's a sword fight in the background that we can't see any of, and presumably the Arbiter takes his ship back under complete control. A lot of coups being attempted in these militaries. John and McKee's cycles have synced up, and they're both about to touch the artifacts and sync up again in the Halo, I guess, like they did last season. And that's where the episode ends. So yeah, I'm guessing next week will be probably all of Soren and Kwan and Lyra's story, and they'll find Kessler, and we'll get a little bit of John and McKee, which will primarily end with him finding his suit. So he'll get to wear his suit for the first and last episodes. And some training in episode 2. Not sure how the Spartan 3 is going to come into this. I thought that by episode 7, they would be all united and going to take back Reach. But now I have no clue. Because I'm assuming they're going to teleport from the thing that Kwan is at to Halo. If you're here, let me know what you think. I respond to anything that's not an insult. Like and subscribe and all that shit. Thanks. See ya.